Hello, hello. Thank you for joining. I'd like to thank Midwich for organizing this. This has been a fantastic turnout for us. Fusion Signage has been around for 7 years doing content management system, but we've been in the industry for about 12 years doing systems integration. So we started, I guess, in your guys' shoes as well. So we know a lot about the screens and the hardware and how it all comes together, which is kind of how Fusion Signage became Fusion Signage, with the simplicity and the cost effectiveness of our solution. My name is James Ingram. I'm co-owner and managing director. I'm also kind of across support and sales and product development and jack of all trades. We're a small business based in Brisbane, 100% Australian owned, all onshore developers and all that kind of stuff, which we're pretty proud of. We've got 10 staff. We've got Gabby here, who's our marketing manager, and we've got a whole bunch of other support teams internally as well. So any questions that you guys have from a reseller's perspective, we're happy to help out and guide you through this process. We hope that the demonstration and what I'm about to show you today gives you a bit of an insight into Fusion Signage. And if you're using digital signage at the moment, we would love you to consider our software as an alternative or an add-on option to your existing sales cycle. But please, any questions you've got, we do have a chat function in here. Feel free to shoot them out and I'll get to those at the end, or if it's urgent, Gabby, you can interrupt me and we can do it during the process. So the flow here is just going to be, I'm going to, I guess, give a bit of an overview of Fusion Signage, how all the pricing works from a reseller's point of view. If there are any end users here, I'm sorry, this is going to be probably a bit more technical in terms of the reseller perspective, in terms of how we use Fusion Signage to sell digital signage solutions. So it's more kind of tailored to the reseller side, but it is going to show a demonstration as well. So you'll see the platform. Perfect. Let me just share my screen and then we can get into this. There we go. Right, as I go along, I'm just going to go through this. It's going to take about half an hour. If anybody wants to stick around at the end, happy to sit around and chat. And if you want to do another demonstration to go through any of these features in more details, we're more than happy to organize that with your team as well. But let's just dive in. So this is the Fusion Signage platform. We are entirely cloud-based solution. All of your customers will have their own instance, their own account that can be set up. And we can do this obviously through Midwich as a distributor. They can arrange through you guys to set yourselves up as a reseller account. And then we can organize for the end customers to be set up as well. So with Fusion Signage on our main website here at fusionsignage.com.au/pricing, we have our fully transparent pricing structure. This is all the end user pricing here. So one of the things that we absolutely hate is when you're trying to figure out how much something costs and you can't find that information. So we are pretty transparent with our prices here, but there is also obviously reseller pricing available to you guys, which Midwich can provide to you. So the margins are approximately 30 to 40%, depending on the license duration and type. So we've tried to make it as appealing for you guys. Obviously software is only one part of the solution, and we hope that you'll see that the benefits of using Fusion is just the simplicity to sell the solution as a whole. So on our main page here, we do have the 3 different license types: Basic, Advanced, and Pro. Essentially, the Basic is just your stock standard kind of digital signage. It doesn't have things like scheduling. It doesn't have access to our designer, which is a Canvas style editor within the platform. It's really just designed for those customers that are price conscious and just want something other than a USB stick. Advanced is our most common license. It's been around the longest with the Basic license, and this is where you start to get more of the robust features of digital signage. So we have things like scheduling and day parting in there, content level scheduling. We've got our designer feature, bit more storage and bandwidth and stuff like that. So most of the time customers will go with the Advanced, and I'll show you all about the designer and how that works for content creation. But you can see all the tick boxes down here, which will explain all the differences between those license tiers. At our top end, we have the Pro license. This is where we're adding more of our enterprise functionality. So if you think of a customer that has probably 20 or more screens, the Pro license may be a little bit more appealing. So in here, we've got things like single sign-on. So a lot of our enterprise customers require things like single sign-on and SAML integration. We've got a location system, which can essentially split out the entire account into sub-accounts. So manage one account through multiple different locations. We're building a tagging system, which I can show you some of the information on to manage thousands of screens with a single playlist. We've got our interactivity, so you can put some touchscreen solutions on there as well. And we've got a whole bunch of kind of data sources as well. So we've done some integrations into POS systems to display dynamic content on the screen based on systems coming from the back-end POS. So Pro is starting to become our more common one just because it kind of has every feature that we're going to be releasing in it. But again, price conscious can be a thing with your customers as well. So Midwich is happy to provide the price list, or in their price list, you'll be able to see all of the pricing as well for these 3 tiers, as well as the 3 different durations of annual, 3-year, and 5-yearly. So if there's any questions on that, please shoot them through to myself or your representative at Midwich, and they can help there as well. Before I dive into the platform as well, I will show you our support center. So the support center here is probably your go-to resource for any information you may need, any questions that you have. So it's just support.fusionsignage.com.au. We have our help guide in here, which will go through essentially just quick start guides, as well as frequently asked questions and just some of our normal things. And mostly the things like ports and firewall will come up as part of discussions with IT teams in terms of, well, what ports do I require? Are there any whitelistable firewalls in here? But we do also have our hosting and security, which is the second question that we get. Where's my data stored? How is it transmitted? And all that kind of stuff. So this is kind of your catch-all question, which 99% of the time will answer their questions, but have a feel free to look through here and search if you've got any questions. We do have our tutorials. So this is a really good way to, I guess, give an overview to your customers around the solution entirely. So we do have 3 different versions. One's 52 seconds, which will show you essentially go in, put some content in, put it into a playlist and deploy it to a screen. So very quick, again, showing the simplicity. A full tutorial, which is 10 minutes if they've got a bit more time, and that'll run through majority of the stuff in the platform, all the big ticket items. And then we have our demo on demand, which is essentially what I'm doing here, but in full detail. So we go through how to create something in the designer, all the little bells and whistles on everything. So this is a 28-minute one, and really good way for them to get an in-depth look of what Fusion Signage is all about. So feel free to use this, but otherwise we do have all our breakdowns of all the different areas if you ever get stuck or need any questions. For you guys as the integrators, the installation guides are probably going to be key. In here, we do have applications for all major operating systems. So Android, Chrome OS, Web OS, Tizen, as well as Windows and Linux. We do have a web player that can be displayed on any browser, and most installation guides for major manufacturers in here as well. So LG, Samsung, Philips, so on and so forth. So all of these should go through and give you a pretty high level overview. It is quite simple if you've ever installed kind of an application on these panels before. Just go through, follow the steps, and up and running with Fusion Signage. So getting the platform up onto the screens is pretty quick. I believe Midwich as well is also talking about potentially preloading this on the screens prior to distribution. So have a chat to them about that if that's of interest. Then it just turns up on site, application installed, you get our identity code, connected to the internet, and away you go. Great. So pricing and support are all available on our website, fully transparent. Any other questions you've got, feel free to get in touch with us directly. On to the demonstration. So what I'm going to do here is just show, I guess, how easy it is for a customer to go in and manage their content. The platform itself, as I mentioned, fully online, cloud hosted. You just access it via app.fusionsignage.com.au in the web. While we can help with that process as well as Midwich in setting up the customer accounts, they receive an email, follow that link, set a password, and then they're in and ready to go. The menu structure on the left over here is pretty straightforward. Start at the top, work your way to the bottom. You've basically created some content, put it into a playlist, and deployed it to your screen. Top is the dashboard. In here, we have 3 major components. So content and media is essentially images and videos that the customer has on their existing created by their marketing team or external agencies. So if they have their own images and video content, that's what we classify as media, as well as websites. But we also have our design. So the designer is a way for customers to create the content directly in the platform. And in here, you can see this first little column shows the designs they've created. If I middle click on that, it'll open it up, and then I can quickly start to edit this design directly within the platform once this video loads. There we go. So now it's in our designer. I can move all these elements around. I can come in, edit any of the fields that I want to do, make this $13, for example, press save, and then that can be deployed directly onto the screen. So the designer, I'll go through in a bit more detail in a second. But essentially, content is the first thing that the customer needs, whether they've created it themselves or whether it's created through the platform, and then that gets put into the Fusion Signage system. Then we have our playlists, and the playlist is just a conduit between that content and the screen. So think of a playlist like any other playlist that you've ever kind of thought of, Spotify playlist, or even just what you put on a USB stick. You want this content in this playlist, and then I can put that playlist on one or any number of screens. So the playlist is start at the top, work its way to the bottom, rotate through that content. We do have some scheduling and bits and pieces, which I'll show you in a second, but the playlist essentially says play this content on the screen. The third element is our schedules, and the schedules takes a playlist and says, I want to play this at a specific time of day or day of the week. So if a playlist is an accumulation of media, a schedule is an accumulation of playlists, and then you can just day part it all the way into the future, however many months you want. So I'll run through all that in a bit more detail. At the top here, we do have our banner, which just says any of the new information. So explore our marketplace, which I'll show you in a second. Go to our support site, so on and so forth, demos and demand. So just some high level information. And on the right over here, we have some just information about the account, how many screens are online, how many licenses, whether they're expiring, and then the storage and bandwidth that you have available. So storage and bandwidth are cumulative based on the number of licenses that a customer has on the account. So the more licenses you have, the more storage and more bandwidth. But to be honest, this hasn't been a problem since very, very early on. I mean, you get more and more the more you add, but nobody's using 13 gigabytes of bandwidth or 26 gigabytes of storage. Bandwidth resets every month, and it just counts for content you upload into the platform, not content that you stream to your screens. So it's just counting what you're uploading. So that's why you have to manage your uploads versus your storage. Cool. Next option on the left is our designer. So once you go through the dashboard, obviously that's a quick access. You can start editing things on the fly, but our designer here allows you to go in and either use our marketplace to find a design for your customer, or the customer can do this themselves. And these are a extra charge. The designer itself, editing, if you're creating from scratch, is completely free. But if you have a customer that's like, look, I'm not a designer, I don't have a designer, how do I get some content? You can come in here and say, look, this menu board, pay $79, you can buy this template and you've got it forever. So they can come in and they can edit all of these elements, update the content, but it gives them a starting point that looks professional in order to get their content looking great, as opposed to spending thousands of dollars on, creative agencies to do the same kind of thing. We have landscape and portrait options in here, and it just gives them an option to say, make sure your screens look great at the first instance. That, as I said, that's optional. So if they don't want to pay that, you can obviously come in, use our designer here and create something from scratch. We have these layouts that allow them to use as a kind of generic starting point. So if you just want a hero marketing message, we can click on that. You can choose between a normal design or an overlay, which I'll show you as well, and landscape and so on. So if I create this from here, you can come in. Now all this is just a canvas for you to start typing your message in here. So if I say hamburger, I won't go into too much detail. You can start to build this in real time. You can copy and paste, and then I can say $19 and move it around. So from here, if you don't have your own imagery, you could use our free stock images. So if I remove this background image, free stock image I can use here. It's tied to Unsplash, has over 1 million free to use stock images. I can look up a beautiful hamburger. I hope everybody's had lunch, because this is where it starts to get a bit crazy. Download that content and it puts it onto the design ready to go. So there's, as I said, over 1 million free to use stock images that are available to make something look pretty decent. On the left over here, we can choose text, and you can upload your own fonts, change all the design, upload your own images. We've got lines, videos, and shapes. So if I want to add in just a nice box shape here, I can do that and put the background color to be white and then send it to the back. You could make a nice little call out up here, change the transparency and so on. As you can see, I'm not a designer by any stretch of the imagination, but if you spend 15-20 minutes in here, you could probably make something look half decent. We do have dynamic widgets. This is where obviously digital signage starts to add a little bit more relevance to your customers if they need things like the clock. So you can put a clock in here which pulls through the device time. You can choose the hour formats, upload fonts, and so on. We have a countdown widget that we built to say, hey, set the end date, and this is now counting down in real time with a bunch of different designs. We have the date widget, weather widget. HTML allows you to tie in external systems. So you can basically, we've done integrations into tram systems. We started with a point of sale system in here. Basically just allows you to put in HTML code that can then pull information through. You can put UV settings, you can put extracts from websites, iframes, whatever you want to do. Very handy. Image slideshow, website, YouTube Live, all your kind of standard designs and widgets that you would expect in a digital signage platform. The second thing that you can do is turn this into a overlay. So if I was to select overlay up here in the settings, this then becomes a transparent background. And what this does is, instead of having hamburger in here, I could add a clock widget, put it up in the top right hand corner, and this overlay can then be put on top of a playlist, and then this will display on top of any content I put within that playlist. So I'll show how this comes into play in a second, but essentially you can create your own widgets and apply it to a screen and have that sit on top. So you can put a QR code, an RSS feed ticker, whatever you really want to do, and it'll sit on top of all of that content. So if I hit save here and I just say overlay block, I can save that into my manage section. And now that becomes something that's available. Same with the designs. I would save that design and it becomes something that's manageable as well. So that's the designer. Essentially, designer is included with our advanced and pro licenses. So if you think that's a benefit for your customers, especially in the pro, I mean, we're doing a lot of work with drive-throughs and some large quick service restaurants with that POS integration. So instead of manually putting in $19, we tie that through to a POS field. If it updates in the POS, that $19 becomes $20, for example. So it's significantly reducing the amount of information that has to be created within the system, and it makes it more dynamic in conjunction with our tagging system to choose the correct content from a source and display it on that screen. So very, very handy for large rollouts with lots of different content. On the left, the next button is the Manage section, and this is where you can organize and manage all of the content within the platform. So this includes media, playlists, and schedules, and we have toggles at the top here to filter the content within a specific folder to showcase that information. So the folder structure is like any other kind of file system that you've used. If you use Windows and Mac, you just create a folder, put a subfolder in it, and then you can upload all of your content in here. Getting it in, you press the add button. You've got the option up here for adding image, videos, websites, and so on. If you click on that, you can then browse for your files and find them, or you could just drag it directly in from your computer and into the folder over here. It'll upload that content. Once it's in, you'll be able to see some information, when it was created, the resolution, the file size, where that file is in use. You can kind of see whether that file is being used, whether to delete it or not. You can preview the file as well to see what it looks like, and then you've got options here to download it, delete it, and so on. So once you've got your media in, the next phase will be to create a playlist. So in that add section in the top, we can go to playlist in the top right, and then say, call it test, for example, press that playlist, and now we can start to add that content in. So think of a playlist like it's going on a screen or a type of screen. So a good option if you're doing menu boards, for example, could be menu screen 1. And if you've got 100 screens that are all displaying the same content and they're all menu board screen 1, then you just know that this content displaying menu board screen 1. You could do screen 2 or portrait or Christmas content, doesn't really matter. It's just as long as you can identify what that content is. Click on add from the dropdown and you can click media. It has all of the content that you've uploaded into your account previously, and then you can literally just come through, start clicking on the files, and it will be building that in the background. You'll notice that we have this little uploader. So as you're editing a file, and normally the time if I'm on the dashboard, you can see I've got a quick access here to the playlists. So if I click on this menu screen 1, which I'm editing, or an existing playlist, I can open it up, click on add media, and then upload content directly here. So it saves me going back to the manage section, finding the folder. I can literally do it while I'm editing that playlist. So very handy uploader. You can also select a folder to choose where you want that content to go. So it means you don't have to leave to go back out if you're in the middle of editing. Once that content's in, you can see the same kind of information: name, resolution, size, duration. You can set the duration on designs as well as images and websites. If it's got a video in the design, it'll be fixed because any video content is obviously the duration of that video. You can drag to rearrange the order. You've got fit, fill, and stretch options here for images and videos. So if your content doesn't quite fit the screen, you can tweak it here. We highly recommend always making your content fit the resolution of the screen, just because it'll always look better. But it is there if you need it. On the far right, we have some actions. First one is to delete. So if you don't want this piece of content in here, you can remove it from the account. I'll remove it from the playlist. You could duplicate a file if you want it in multiple times. Just drag it up and down, and now that'll play once it hits that content as well. You can show and hide, which will just disable that content for a temporary period. And we've got the first way that you can schedule content here by clicking on content level scheduling. So at the media item level, you can click on it and say, I only want to play this content on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. You can specify a start and end time or a start and end date. So if I wanted it to be from the 1st of February until the end of February, Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays all day, I can apply that, and then that piece of content gets added into the rotation at that point, so it won't play until then. You could add in secondary schedules and say also Saturday at this time, and really refine this down at the specific media item level, which is really quite powerful. On the far right, we have replace. So let's say there's a spelling mistake or something, or you just have a new promo that you want to add in. You can just click on the replace, find a new file, and then click on it and press replace, and then that'll swap that content out in situ. So you don't have to worry about updating your content level scheduling again. Fantastic. The other thing that you can do is add in a whole playlist. So in the add section up here, you've got media and playlist, and then you can go add a whole playlist. And this allows you to find another playlist that has a whole other subset of content, add it in, and now you can treat it like any other media item. So this could contain all of the standard promotions for every location, or it could be your Christmas content or a client show reel or something like that. You can put that in and you can do all the same things: content level scheduling, show, hide, duplicate, and so on. If I middle click on that, you'll see it opens up that playlist and it has its own subset of content. So it's just an easy way to organize content if you want to do it by a playlist as well. Great. So when you're ready, you can press the preview button. And at the top over here, we do have a portrait and landscape option, so you can see what the content's going to look like. And then you can just cycle through and say, perfect, this is how I want my content to look. I'm ready to go, and now I can publish it. You'll notice this overlay button here. If I click on overlay, and I now select the overlay clock, set that and hit preview, you'll see in that top right-hand corner, there's that widget with the transparent box. And as I cycle through, that sits on top of all that content. So you've got complete control over how that looks and feels. It could be a whole side banner, it could be a bottom banner with a news ticker, but it just gives you a lot of flexibility in creating any kind of widget and displaying it on your screens. Okay, next, save and publish. So you've got all your content ready in this playlist, and now you're ready to get it to a screen. Go to the screen section here. You can select all the existing screens that are on that account. It'll say whether the screen is currently online. These are just some dummy screens, but it should say green online. It'll tell you whether there's any content currently assigned and what you're overriding, and then you can hit save and publish. We do have screen groups, which allow you to put any number of screens into a group, and you could have 100 screens in a group and update them all at the same time. So that is another option if you just want to organize the screens for your customers as well. Hit save and publish. It's going to warn me that these screens are offline. Obviously, it requires an online connection at the screen level in order to receive new content. If it does disconnect for some reason, it will continue to play the content that was last scheduled, but it won't update. So this is a good opportunity, I guess, to check, make sure that the internet's connected on site. Hit save and publish, and then within about 40 seconds, that content will download and update on the screen. So pretty straightforward, pretty seamless kind of process to get content in and curated. You can obviously assign this to hundreds of screens and update hundreds of screens at the same time. Most of our customers end up doing that, where we have customers with 500 licenses and they only have 4 or 5 playlists that they kind of use to manage the whole network, which is pretty handy as well. Next is a schedule. So I've created a whole bunch of playlists, and now I want to schedule that content. So if I create one called test again, now in here I get this calendar view. So this is the second way that we can schedule content. So in here I can drag over a specific time zone and say, okay, I want my standard promotion to play here, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, forever. I can tick that and it puts that playlist in. And now as I move forward the weeks, that playlist is scheduled at exactly that time. So really good for day parting the content into the future. Likewise, I can come down here and put additional playlists on and really start to organize my marketing calendar based on a specific playlist to play at a specific time. So the reason we would use this over just the content level scheduling is because it's going to exclusively change this playlist over and only play the content within that playlist. You could set that up within a playlist, but it means you have to kind of make sure any content that you don't want to display is counter scheduled to a different time. So it becomes a bit burdensome depending on how much you got. This is just a nice and clean way to ensure that content only plays. Where there is a gap between these two schedules, you can set a default playlist. So at the end of this standard promotion, if nothing else is scheduled, it'll just continue to play this content, which some of our customers don't need. So you can set a default playlist that says, all right, if this isn't, if nothing else is scheduled, play my standard promo. It'll gray out everything around there. And now as soon as this event ends, it starts playing that content instead. So now you don't have to worry about it playing the content that doesn't match that exact time frame. When you're ready, hit save and publish, and then you can assign this schedule to the screen. So what I'd be doing here is overriding that single playlist that I created and putting on a schedule, because the schedule is automating changing between multiple playlists, so we can't have both a schedule and a playlist on the screen. So for this screen, I want this schedule to play, hit save and publish, and then when the time comes, it'll start playing the correct content, and then when that time ends, it'll play the other content. So hopefully pretty straightforward to get scheduled content on the system. So that's the manage section. Hopefully that's pretty straightforward in terms of getting content in, adding a playlist and putting that playlist into a schedule, getting it to the screen. Final step over here is the deploy section. And this is where I guess you guys as resellers will come in and set up the account or maybe support the customer moving forward. So this is where it displays all of their screens and all their devices. So getting a new screen on the system is pretty straightforward. You click on the add screen, and in here it'll tell you how many licenses are assigned to the account. It is a single license per screen, so you require a license for every unique endpoint that you want. If I open up our web player here, so this is just player.fusionsignage.com.au. This will give you an idea of what the application looks like. It's pretty much the same on all of the operating systems, maybe some minor variations, but pretty much similar. Gets this 5 or 6 digit identity code, which if I copy, add that identity code in, give it a screen name, select a license and my time zone. This is just for reporting back to the server its online status. Hit add screen, and now that screen is in here and ready to go. So you'll see this is saying online, activated, and so on. So some of the information that we can see in here, if I click on it, is a device fingerprint. So this will tell you what the device is. This is our Gecko View Chrome. You can see whether it's a Sony screen or a Samsung screen or an LG screen. It'll give you that information in there. It'll tell you the identity code, the license, when it was last online, any of the content, and so on. We are working on some device management that'll come out this year, so you can do things like schedule on-off time for the screen, reboot the screen, screenshot the screen, all that kind of stuff. So that's coming for some of our panels, which will be very exciting. But at the moment, it's just pretty kind of stock standard with getting the screens in there. If I want to put some content on here, we do have this teal box here that allows me to select between playlist, schedules, and interactive. Interactive is our touchscreen solution. It does require us to create a kind of layout for the customer so that they can populate it themselves. If that's of interest, happy to have a conversation separately. But up the top, playlists and schedules, I can choose the content I want, press that, and now that content will be sent to that screen. We have our notification section here, which allows you to send emails if the screen goes offline. So good to be proactive if the device loses internet connectivity. And offline to us just means we can't reach or communicate with that application. So if the internet drops out, the content will continue to play, but it won't be reporting as online because we think our application isn't accessible. Online status will give you a 14-day history of what this device has done. It'll just give you a histogram that shows whether it's a stable connection or when it dropped offline. We do have the license, so you can see that it's an advanced license, when it's due to expire, the remaining time frame, and when it was last updated, as well as the application version, which is just good for support. And then we have our screen grouping, which shows the ability to create a new group and add any number of screens in here, and then I can update all of those screens at the same time by clicking on this and pressing submit. It'll change that content over and push that out to every single screen. I am conscious of the time. I have 2 minutes left. I would love to show, I guess, some of our more pro level features. So if anybody has to duck off, thank you so much for listening. That's kind of the end of the initial demo, but I will show some of our higher level pro features here just quickly. We do have an approval system. So this is all under our pro license. So any content uploaded has to go through an approver to be added into the account. We have our location system, apologies, which allows you to build tiers in the back end. So you can start at national, country, state, store, all the way down to your location, and then build out a hierarchy in the back here. This icon here designates a location. This is where you would put all of your screens. You can add users to this location, and then only those users can see the content and the screens applicable to that location. So really handy if you have a customer that has hundreds of sites and each site manages their own content. It can all be done within one, where a super user can kind of see everything, and then only the users on this site can see and manage the screens down here. And you can set permissions for specific users here or up the chain. So you could have a New South Wales regional manager who can view everything, and you could set view permissions and they can see everything within that region as well. So quite powerful for customers that have a longer reach. But to be honest, in our experience, most customers have 2 or 3 people in a marketing team that manage hundreds and hundreds of sites. So it depends on the structure and how they work. The other thing I can show is something that's still in work in progress, but it's our tagging system. So the tagging system allows you to create a series of tags and apply those tags to specific screens. So this demo screen has got 1920 by 1080, Australia, external facing, so on. When you go into a playlist now, in the playlist over here, we have a tagging view. And as you add content in, it allows you to then set a tag rule, which says only play this piece of content if a corresponding screen includes all of 1920 by 1080, for example. So it'll then pick up all the screens and say only apply it if this screen matches here. So you can start to see the power of how the tagging system can now dictate what content goes to specific sites, as opposed to having 100 playlists for 100 screens who have different content. You can have one playlist and say only play if it matches this. Pretty powerful. We're still working on it in the back end, but this will be released hopefully in the next couple of months. So if anybody's interested in doing some testing for us, please do reach out. Happy to give you guys some access to this once it becomes available, and I'd love to get feedback on it. We do have in the backend system here as well our single sign-on, so SAML integration with Azure Active Directory. Pretty straightforward in terms of getting that in, so you can manage all your users separately as well. Okay, 1:31. I've gone a minute over, but a bit rushed, I feel, but I just wanted to give a high-level overview. Are there any questions that anybody has specifically that maybe I can cover off on? I can't see any questions, so Gabby, scream out if... How do you switch a screen to portrait? Okay, cool. So normally that's done on the screen itself. So one of the things that we're doing with our device management is coming in and having the ability to configure the screen. So depending on the screen, we will have the ability soon to change the orientation for most major manufacturers. But mostly when that installation process is happening, it will be done either automatically because our application will just orient itself to the orientation of the screen. So if you mount it in portrait, the app is going to run portrait. And normally people don't leave site without it looking like it's the correct orientation. So changing between portrait and landscape don't happen post unless the screen kind of gets replaced, which requires probably a technician on site anyway. But there will be options in here to tweak a lot of that stuff. Size capacity. So I think we have a limit of a 1 gigabyte upload on the video. We can extend that if needed, but most customers don't go past that. In terms of resolution as well, 1920 by 1080, we kind of say standard. Even though 4K is an option most of the time, a lot of the operating systems don't actually allow us to support 4K in most situations, and 4K content ends up pushing the limits a lot of this hardware, especially with applications that aren't running the video directly natively on the screen. So we always kind of standardize it to say 1920 content is pretty stock standard. How can you have multiple zones? Yep, so we do have a feature within here, which I'll show you quickly. We do have our zone editor. This was originally designed to be kind of multi-screen menu boards, so we could do full screen takeovers with a single media player that's being driven off of it. But the other feature that we can do is have this zone in here and add a playlist in. So this now becomes a inset playlist that can be used on permission systems and stuff separately. We can add in individual media as well. So yes, you can zone it out in here. This requires a little bit of setup, but once it's set up, the content can be displayed in that as well. Can screens within a group be updated independently too? So with the screen grouping, it's all done based on this group. So if you wanted a screen to have individual content, you'd either have to use our tagging system or you'd have to take it out. So you can move a screen. I don't have any screens. So let me just move this one. So I can move a screen to a group over here, for example, and it's in here. It would update that content, but then you could move it out of a group or move it back to individual and then put that content on it. So that's, most of our customers probably don't use the screen grouping for that exact reason, just because each screen may have some minor variations to it. So they usually just put a playlist on the screen, and then that screen will just, you update the playlist to update the content moving forward. So most of our customers don't change between playlists that frequently, and if they do, they're probably using a schedule. Support video walls, absolutely. So the way the licensing works with the video wall is it becomes a single source. So you've got a single media player. The video walls will be doing the loop through. So one source, it'll just be scaling that up. You could have 100 screens. It could be an LED. It doesn't really matter. From my point of view, it is just a single source. And as long as the display port or HDMI loop through is happening, single source on that screen. Then you can use our zoning system as well if you want to display different content on there. Synchronization is coming out in the next few months. I think the end of Q1, Q2, we are going to have the ability to synchronize content. The way that that's most likely going to work, we're still working through some of the things at the moment, but essentially in here, we'll have another option that says sync, and we'll be able to send a sync command from here and then synchronize that to another command being sent somewhere else. But yes, the long and short of it is we will have synchronization very shortly. Any other questions? This is great. Heaps of questions. I love it. While I wait for any more of those to come through. So normally the process will be so I guess where most of our resellers have had success is just demoing Fusion Signage and the simplicity of Fusion Signage to your customer to showcase how easy it is for their solution to work after the installation, right? Most of the time we find that there's that fear factor of, I don't understand what digital signage is. I know about TVs. I think it's all kind of hardware based, but then they end up giving it to the receptionist or the marketing team. They're like, what do I do with this? And in our experience in the past as well, giving them a 100-page document that says, here's your instructions on how to update your system never really works. So the simplicity of our system is where I guess most of our resellers are having success, because they feel confident going in, demoing it, saying, you put your image here, you put your playlist on, and the customer goes, wow, that's fantastic. That's easy. I can do that. So when you get that kind of feedback, you remove the fear of the sale. And then once that happens, they just say, okay, how many screens can I get? If they're happy with the system, and we've got about a 90% renewal rate as well, even as long as the 3-year licenses, which is fantastic. Majority of the time, either the businesses don't exist anymore, which is a shame, but yeah, so our renewal rate is around 90%. So you've got a lot of comfort, I guess, in that if you install Fusion Signage, 3 years, 1 year, 5 years from now, you're going to get that recurring revenue source, and it's an opportunity to talk to them again about how they're going with it, as well as if they need any additional screens. So really leading with Fusion Signage to sell your digital signage has been where most of our resellers have that success, because that's what they care about at the end of the day, is how do I update my content? How do I create content? And how simple is it going to be? Also, the cost effectiveness. We've tried to keep our pricing half to a third of the cost of most of our competitors for that reason. Pro license obviously starts to get on par with most of them, but the features and functionality that you get in there are definitely worth it. So hopefully this has been beneficial. I know that we're a few minutes over. If anybody has any last minute questions, feel free to pop them into the chat box, or feel free to reach out to us after this event. Happy to answer them, happy to do a demo, happy to have any demos with your customers as well. The license starts from that time. Yeah, so when our licenses are, as soon as they're created, they start to count down. We haven't got the ability to delay that. We do have a 21-day free trial where most of the time customers will set up a trial license, which obviously runs for 21 days, which can be used to pre-stage them, and then that license can just be upgraded at any point there to start it at that point. It hasn't really been a problem for the last 7 years for most customers, but if it is a bugbear, if you've got longer timeframes than that, have a chat to us. We can edit it in the back end if it is a consistent issue where, you know, we pre-stage it here and then it takes us 2 months to get to site or whatever. We can always amend that expiry date by 2 months if that's the case. But most of the time it's, you know, you buy the license at the last minute and the customer's up and running, and it's only really a couple of days during that time frame. So Glenn, if you want to, we can have a chat about that separately, and I can see what I can do for you. Great. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, thank you so much for taking time. I know it is hard to get people here, so we appreciate, you know, you taking the time to come out. I hope we can showcase Fusion Signage again at any point if we need to. I'd love to meet all of you guys and discuss your business and how we can hopefully help you get some sales. So please, if you've got any other questions, let us know. Otherwise, thank you so much for turning up. Thanks to Midwich for hosting us as well. That was fantastic. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.